All right, third grade, with the addition of quarter 2 sheet, you now have a whole new list of projects to choose from. So I am going to start out with number 12. Number 12 says produce a landscape with a horizon line, background, middle ground, and foreground. So in this example, if you see the scarecrow, he's considered to be in the foreground because he's very close to you. Usually what's in the foreground is also at the bottom of the page and it's quite large. The middle ground is more the middle of the paper, normally about medium sized, and the horizon line that you need to use in your picture is where the sky meets the ground. So you can see this hill back here that the field stops and the sky comes down and touches it. It's the air. That's the horizon line where the sky meets the ground. You need to have that in the picture. You need to have middle ground, you need to have your foreground, and then background. The background is like the sky, maybe this barn and silo because it's quite a ways back there. So you need to create a landscape. Landscape is a picture of the land, and so I was working on a jungle picture. It can be a jungle picture, that's still land. And so I was working on making sort of like these lily pads in the pond up close down here at the bottom of the page. Then I was working on making sort of a big elephant towards the bottom of the page. I need to think of something else to put over here, and that will be in the foreground. Then the middle ground is going to be more like the middle of the paper. So it might be this grass and these cattails. It could be some of the turtle could be in there. I may add more trees for the background, but I may also add in sort of like a volcano or a mountain that kind of comes back in here behind the trees, which would also add more depth to my picture. The depth meaning it goes back further in space and kind of adds that line in to add another layer of ground back there. Rather than it just being right here, this would now be my horizon line, okay? So I may add more trees up in here. And I was trying to kind of do different funky type of leaves and stuff on my trees, so that's why I am not finished, because I was taking time to do a whole bunch of different kinds. And so some of them are kind of magical or fantasy. They're not real trees necessarily, but it's still a landscape. And so that is what you need to do. You need to have a horizon line, you need to have middle ground, foreground in the front, and stuff in the background too. Usually what's in the background is also a lot smaller, so it looks like it's further away. And so that will also help to make it look like it's pushed back in the back. So this is just one example. You could also do this as a collage and cut and glue your picture. You could use drawing materials to color it in, or we're going to be having watercolors out, so you could also watercolor this. One thing you might think about doing is outlining it instead of with marker, outline it with crayon. If you do a dark crayon line, the watercolor won't like go over the crayon line. It's called a watercolor resist, and the wax in the crayon pushes the water back off, and so it will stay inside of your shapes better than if it was marker, where it would just go across the line. You can also use oil pastel to outline with. That would also do the watercolor off of the line. It just has to be on fairly thick. Little things would be pretty hard to trace, like this eye and his shell. So that may be something that, you know, you don't want to outline with oil pastel because of the reason that it's small, okay? Now, you could also do this as a different picture. You can do any type of picture you want. That's just one that I had. This is a different picture that I pulled out that I had done in previous years. Since it's closer to Halloween, this might be something you want to do. This was a skeleton picture, so I drew the skeleton as a bride, and the church is in the background, and the trees kind of in the middle ground. Well, these are probably more middle ground than background. The background would just be the sky. And the foreground is this skeleton bride. I gave her a bouquet of roses along with her wedding dress and her little veil. Her veil was a little tricky because her bones are already white. And so to at least make it a little bit different color, I tried to do the veil like a light gray color. This is colored with oil pastels, but I drew it on black paper. So on the black paper, I drew with pencil first. Then I actually took a glue bottle and I outlined around the edges of the pencil, or on top of the pencil, I should say. I outlined on the pencil with glue. And then I put it on the drying rack when everything was outlined with glue. Let that dry overnight, and then the next time I came in, I used the oil pastel in my picture to color it. Now, I blended a lot of colors. This has like dark green, light green, and a little yellow in my tree, but I also colored it like circly. I added bricks on top of my red to make my church, and my stained glass, I did a lot of different colors. I kind of mixed in the grass down here too, some light and dark. My sky has some turquoise blue and then like just regular sky blue. So that is another thing that you can also add to this project. You can do it as a landscape, but it could be a skeleton, it could be a scarecrow, it could be animals, whatever you want, as long as it's a landscape and it has the horizon line used correctly with background, middle ground, and foreground. That's number 12 on your sheet. Have fun.